5:01. We're officially off. So very warm welcome. This is Inclusion Circles. My name is Aman Zaidi, and we've got a lot of wonderful people here, including you. And we're just going to start getting introduced to all the wonderful people. To begin this, what we want to do is we want to begin with a little bit of a poll. So my colleague Gurleen she's just going to give us a poll to participate in, and you can participate in the poll, and then we'll share results with you. So Gurleen, over to you.
Hi, Aman. So I'm going to share my screen and you're going to see the poll, and you can start just a second. So if you see on your screen, you can start texting in the chat box. There is some technical error here, surprisingly. So you can text in the chat box whatever, ever in your life. Have you ever experienced inclusion in your life? So
Inclusion.
Yes.
Yeah, exclusion. Yes.
Exclusion.
Have you ever felt excluded in your life? So yes, no, I don't know what you're talking about. We're seeing quite a few yeses. If you look at your chat box, you got a bevy of yeses out there. We got a C, which is I don't know what you're talking about, and there's another yes. All right. Wow. Interesting. So what it looks like, people. Gurleen, thank you so much. People, thank you so much for doing this. What it looks like, just on the basis of this quick dipstick that we've done, what it looks like is that feeling excluded is not as rare an event as we would imagine. Almost, it happens to a lot of us, and we experience in our lives, or sometime or the other, some form of exclusion. So what we're, therefore going to do is we're going to talk about why inclusion circles, and for that I'm going to hand over to my co-host for today and my colleague Mishti Verma. Mishti, over to you.
Thank you so much, Aman. Hello, everyone. Good evening, and a very warm welcome once again to Inclusion Circles. So, let me introduce to you what Inclusion Circles is. Inclusion Circles are safe spaces for everyone to air their views on diversity, equity, and inclusion beyond any judgment or bias. And I'm going to use the acronym of SIP to explain this. So S is for stories. We'll get to learn some powerful stories and journeys around inclusion with conversations with our eminent guest speakers. There'll be a lot of room for inspiration through personal experience sharing, and P, some interesting practices around diversity, equity, and inclusion. After that, we're going to have a sharing circle for all of us to share our experiences as well. On that note, may I ask my co-host, Aman, to invite our fantastic speaker today and introduce her for the Inclusion Circle today. Over to you, Aman.
Thank you, Mishti. The privilege of introducing our guest today is mine. I actually first had the opportunity of encountering her possibly 2 years ago when I heard her speak at an event, and I was absolutely blown away with her, with the kind of storytelling that she did out there, and with her advocacy around diversity, inclusion, and equity. So Amita is a lot of things apart from being a diversity and inclusion advocate. A wonderful storyteller, a lovely human being. She's also a banker by profession, and it is my great privilege to welcome her today. So Amita Karat-Kherkar, very warm welcome from us.
Thanks, Aman, and thank you so much for having me. As I was telling you initially, I really enjoy these opportunities of having conversation and influencing minds. So, hi all. Before we get into the conversation, I hope all of you are safe, taking care of your not just physical but also emotional and mental well-being, wearing masks, We are not right now because we are in a bio bubble, holed up in our houses. So we are not wearing masks right now, but otherwise, whenever you're stepping out, wearing mask, following social distancing, because we are into something which all of us are experiencing for the first time. So that's okay. I mean, we can get through it. All of us are together in this. So, Aman, do you want me to start with my journey, or how do you want me to start the conversation?
Super, Amita. I think your journey would be a great place to start. Just before you get into your journey, I'm curious. A lot of us said we've experienced inclusion. Has that happened to you as well? Have you experienced it?
Exclusion?
Yeah.
So that's where, I mean, that question goes hand in hand with my journey. So I can't really answer that question without mentioning my journey. So that's how it is. Yeah.
Let that be the beginning for your story.
All right. Yeah. So, also let's make this conversation very interactive. So, as I was telling Aman also, digital revolution is comes with a lot of cons also. I mean, people do log into Zoom meetings, but then, they might switch off their video and get busy with their daily chores. That's why it's important to make this conversation interactive. And at the same time, if others can go on mute, whoever is not speaking, that would help me be in line with the conversation. All right. So coming back to my journey, so what I do, I work for a captive of a global bank. I'm the site head for testing of the wealth management function of the bank. So it's a very routine kind of a life. I have a global team based in Pune, Chennai, Singapore, Bangalore, and NAM. So we are the technology kind of an arm of the bank. So we test the technical solutions. And with testing, as whoever understands testing, so it's not just about the functional testing, but also non-functional testing. That's where the focus is not about just the domain expertise, but also the technical expertise. Techno-functional tester is the term. And this is what brings food to my table. Very routine kind of a life wherein, on working days, I'm just struggling against the deadlines and a lot of issues. When it comes to the project deliveries, very typical kind of a life. And then you have concerns or struggles or issues around people management, typical, and especially during this pandemic when people are working remotely, the kind of issues have also changed. So dealing with that on a daily basis. But apart from that, when it comes to weekends or when it comes to holidays, like today we have a holiday. So I indulge in these conversations, and the genesis of these conversations is with my journey. So again, I don't mention explicitly about my journey because I don't believe in commoditizing my journey, but at the same time, I do believe in sensitizing people and educating people, because without having these uncomfortable conversations, a lot of us don't understand our privileges, and especially privileged gender, men. They are born with so many privileges. So unless and until we register it, they don't realize their privileges. That's where it's important to have these conversations and bring out these journeys. So this conversation might make some of you uncomfortable, but that's okay. This is what the theme of this session is. Feel free to vocalize your discomfort. Yeah, I'll be more than happy to address whatever concerns you have. So more than 2 decades of my life, I struggled with something which is medically recognized as gender dysphoria. So gender dysphoria is something where your biological sex is not aligned with your psychological gender. So human beings have 3 aspects, which even till today, with digital revolution still not taught in our schools. That's where most of us are blindly unaware about this. One is gender identity, one is sexual orientation, and one is gender expression. So sexual orientation is, one's emotional, physical, and romantic attraction towards the other person. In most of the cases, men are attracted towards women, heterosexuals, and women are attracted towards men, heterosexuals. Okay, there are these individuals who identify themselves as men, are attracted towards men. We call them gays or homosexuals. Likewise, there are these individuals who identify themselves as women or female and who are attracted towards females. We call themselves lesbians. Yeah. This is all about sexual orientation. Now, when it comes to gender identity, which is different than sexual orientation, gender identity is one's innate feeling of their own self. So gender lies here. It's nothing to do with what lies between your legs. But as a society, we have not yet evolved. That's where whenever a baby is born, we look at what is there between the leg, and that's how we decide the gender. But then there are these individuals like me who go through the journey of understanding and exploring your own gender. And then, it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. So what they show in movies, suddenly you wake up the next morning and, oh, wow, this is how it is. That's not how it works. It's a struggle. It's a process of exploring your own self, and it takes time. Every individual has their own journey. So there is no prototype that, at this stage, this will happen. At this stage, this will happen. Nothing like that. When it comes to gender expression, how do you express yourselves? Through your clothing, through your actions, through your personality, through your mannerisms. So these are three different aspects. In most of the cases, they are very much in sync, but in some cases, these are not. So coming back to my journey, that is where then, once I realized that this is what it is, then I had options, So accept this is what it is and embrace my true self, or just kill myself, which maybe so many people would have been happy, but that's not what I wanted to choose. So I chose to go through a journey of gender transition. I have gone through a metamorphosis of legal, social, and medical transition to embrace my true self. And that's how then I embraced womanhood. Now, with this journey, couple of facts. The moment an individual talks about this journey, suddenly we make certain assumptions and judgments in our head. Tuck, 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 tuck. That is where we are wrong. We should, fine, I am discussing my journey, but doesn't mean you should start putting me into certain categories. Why? Because when I spoke about legal transition, I always wanted to fit into binaries. So after my legal transition, my gender on all my legal documents is female. Okay, that's where if you look at even our constitution, I'm very much entitled today for the same legal rights as that of any other cis woman in India. I very much fit into binary. If I get married to a cis man, my marriage will also be legally recognized. All right. But this is what very individual specific to me. Okay. That's where maybe the struggles that I have gone through might be lesser. The severity, the intensity was lesser as compared to certain other individuals who do not fit into binary. There are these other so many individuals, especially if you look at the community that is there in India, in South Asian context, who has been there for generations. For them now we have a legal gender called third gender. So they identify themselves as third gender T, and that is what leads to a lot of struggles when it comes to survival. Okay. Also now, the concern or the narrative or the discourse is not just about survival. Like I was discussing with Aman, it's more about thriving. If you look at our struggle when it comes to independence struggle, we got independence in 1947. We were living prior to that also, right? So what was the need for independence? We were living, but we wanted that independence because it was more about thriving aspect of our lives. Similarly, when it comes to individuals from various sections of the societies, especially LGBTI+, it's not just about living, it's also about thriving. So by that I mean, if you hire a person from the LGBTI+ community into your workplace, fine, you're meeting your tick, you're hiring diversity targets and goals have been met. But that's not where the problem is solved. That's not where the concern is getting addressed. When that individual is within organization, how are you helping that individual to thrive? That is what the main aspect of the discussion is. And that is where the focus should also be, not just about the targets and hiring individuals or creating employment opportunities. Also opportunities where we can be enablers for the LGBTI+ individuals to thrive in their professional journeys. So yeah, I think I have covered about my journey. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Amita. I think that distinction that you're making between surviving and thriving is really, really important, right? I mean, we got to look beyond merely living or merely employment and expand our inclusion goals beyond that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I do, you did say something about discomfort, and I want to echo that. There could be people who might experience some discomfort here, and I want to go out a little bit of disclosure. When I heard your story for the first time, Amita, I did go through those emotions because it was so new for me to hear, also about your struggle and what you went through. It was difficult, and I was moved, and I did come up to you and want to talk to you after that. So it's possible that some of you may be experiencing that, and use the chat box to talk about it and throw questions that we'll come up. Mishti, over to you. You have a question to ask.
Yes. Thank you so much, Aman, and thank you, Amita, for sharing your journey. It's indeed very powerful, and it's like you said, it's very important to educate people about these journeys. And you spoke about surviving, you spoke about thriving. Unfortunately, in our journey of surviving and thriving, there are also a lot of biases that we encounter, because biases is something that's ingrained in the social and mental fabric. So I just wanted to ask you, during your personal transformation journey, what were some of these experiences around biases that you encountered, and how did you overcome them or challenge them, rather?
Yeah, sure, Mistry. Thanks for the question. So, if you look at my journey, so there are these two major kind of concern areas. One is family and one is the professional circle, right? So, when it comes to, because all of us love our families, right? So, regardless of our gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, the feelings are the same towards our families. So, we want our families to be with you. Fortunately, I am blessed with a family who is with me, so as I have mentioned in my TEDx talks also, I found he for she in my own dad. I found she for she in my sisters, in my mother. All right. Not so many other individuals are so privileged and lucky. Their family disown themselves just because they are different. Yeah. So when it comes to the biases from the family perspective, all of us come from very boxed upbringing, very boxed milieu, because in still education system, nobody talks about these various aspects of individual's existence. And that boxed education leads to a lot of different understandings when it comes to normality. Something which doesn't fit into this binary definition or linear definition of sexuality suddenly becomes this alien concept, alien person, or westernized concept, and that's why that person doesn't deserve to live here, at least in India. That person should go away. That is where, when it comes to my family, initially when I started having these conversations with them, of course they were very understanding to indulge in a healthy conversation, but they had certain blocks around. They thought, now I'm going to quit everything and just start begging on the street. So this is what their bias was talking about, because that's what they had seen growing up. They hadn't seen any other journey who has gone through a gender transition journey and still was thriving in their professional careers. And that's where oppression comes into picture. That's how the systemic oppression have been working for generations. That's what their concern was. So are you going to quit everything and start begging on the street? This is how the family biases exist. Or I'll talk about now in the professional setup. There are these different biases that I see today. Constantly we are having conversations around inclusion, diversity, equity, which is really good. There are these conversations happening around LGBTI plus individuals. Now we have Pride Month, which June is celebrated as Pride Month. Suddenly we'll see parade of rainbow colored logos on LinkedIn, people holding placards and celebrating Pride. All that will happen. It's called rainbow capitalism. Very well, very good. We need to celebrate this. But then suddenly there will be this silence after that. Also, what is happening behind this? Behind this, subconsciously, we are compartmentalizing our own workforce. All right. So we are forming ERGs, but with formation of ERGs, we are also nurturing new biases amongst us. So an LGBTI plus individual will only be part of the LGBTI plus ERG, Pride, Spectrum, or whatever you want to call it, Rainbow, whatever, fancy names, creative minds. Then women, cis-born women, cis-het women, they will be this ERG for women. Only they will be part of that. Lean-in circles, only women will be part of that. All right. Then there will be this disability or ERG for specially able colleagues. Only they will be part of that. Generations network. Only the older people, older employees will be part of that network. So what is happening here? We are compartmentalizing the workforce, and we are also creating and nurturing new kind of biases. So if you constantly speak about my journey at the workplace, and if you constantly make me feel different at the workplace, how are you making me feel included at the workplace? You're not. Similarly, if you're constantly making an disabled colleague or especially able colleague realize their disability, their different ability at the workplace, how are you making them feel included at the workplace? Right? So that is what we are doing at the workplaces presently. We are talking about inclusion, but we are talking about inclusion which is far away from where our mouth should be, or where our money and action should be. Where our actions and money should be where our mouth is. So if we really want to talk about inclusion, we need to look at intersectionality. Why can't a person from the LGBTI plus community be on the panel discussion for, let's say, some technology forum or any other very common theme for discussion? But that's not what we are doing, or that's not what I see happening. Pride month is there, suddenly all the LGBTI plus people, and that is where also one gay person will be called gay man, one lesbian woman, one out and proud trans woman will be called, and there will be this panel discussion about their journeys. Done. Our tick mark is done for the Pride month. No, that is again, you are practicing so many biases within your head. You are compartmentalizing them, and speaking about these personal aspects of somebody's journey is not easy. Put yourself in, let's say, my shoes. So if you join a new organization and suddenly in your introduction, you talk about this, you're like whoever the heterosexual person in this conversation is, imagine in your introductory speech in your new organization, you talk, oh, I'm a heterosexual man. Do you talk like that? No, that's never a point of mentioning in your introductory speech at your, let's say, new organization or any other conversations at the coffee table or even in pantries. Then why a gay man or a lesbian woman or a trans person is asked to speak about that suddenly in their introduction? Aren't you practicing new biases in your head and nurturing a culture of non-inclusion at the workplaces? Yeah. So that's where the need of the hour is. We really need to, reflect upon our inclusion practices at the workplace. Are we really looking at legal rights and protection at the workplace for the LGBTI plus individuals? Or we are just looking at the tick marks to meet our, PD performance objectives for the year, right? What are our priorities? Are we further dividing the workforce? Are we further encouraging the biases at the workplaces so that we divide the workforce more? Or are we really creating an inclusive workplaces? Yeah. So I think this is what the need of the hour is, and that is where our focus should be. You're on mute, Mishti. I can't hear you.
So wonderfully said, Amita. That's where the focus needs to be. And from what you spoke about stereotypes, I think inclusion begins with our homes and how we process stereotypes, what we read in books, in television, and so on. So the same information is carried at our workplaces as well. And another thing that you spoke very well about was labeling. That we create further exclusion when we create different compartments or groups based on diversity. So diversity doesn't mean creating diverse groups only. It's also about embracing diversity where inclusion comes in. So I feel these are very, very relevant points. And thank you for creating awareness around that and reinforcing this as principles of inclusion. So on that note, may I bring in Aman for the next question?
Thanks, Mishti. Thanks, Amita. I think one wonderfully articulated. You're making a clear distinction between slotting and including. So slotting is the opposite of including, and unfortunately, in a country like ours, we tend to see human beings according to the labels they wear. Right? I mean, it could be it could be gender wise, but it could also be sexuality wise. It could also be race, religion, color, all of that wise. And I think you tell me if this is what you're saying. I think you're encouraging us to move beyond slotting and labeling and see human beings as human beings, professionals and as professionals. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. See, now to further maybe to give a couple of examples. Fine, you have hired a gay man to meet your LGBTI plus target. Fine, but what if that a gay man wants to proudly showcase his partner at the workplace, who still, we don't have gay marriages legal in India, leaving that aside, but let's say we talk about the future world where the marriages are legalized. Okay, so what if that gay man wants to show his husband at the workplace? Do you have that kind of a culture at the workplace? Have you sensitized your workforce at the workplace? Do you have policies where same legal rights and protection that legally wed homosexual couple can have, just like any other heterosexual couple? All right. Similarly, now let's say you have hired a trans person whose gender identity legally is T, third gender. Okay, your tick is met, fine, but then does your corporate insurance protect a person whose gender is T on the legal documents? All right. Similarly, now you have a person who is trans person, but their documents are not updated. So on their legal documents, their gender is something which they don't identify with. Are you in a position to hire a person like that through your hiring, onboarding processes? So for example, imagine a man, okay, visible gender expression right now is man, okay, all right. That man do not identify themselves as man. That man is a trans person. I'm using the term man, which is wrong, but I'm using so that it's easy for all of you to understand. Now they have told you in their hiring process, I am a trans woman. I want to go through a journey of gender transition. Today, my gender is male on my legal documents, but I will be getting that updated, but I am not comfortable being addressed as man. I am not comfortable with the gender pronoun, masculine gender pronoun, he, his. Okay. How are you in a position to hire that person? Similarly, let's look at the people who are already your employees. So there is this person who is now going through the journey of gender transition. Legal document updation takes time. So now on their legal documents, still the name is the dead name, still the gender is dead gender. But now the person is not comfortable addressed with the dead name. They have a new identity, which is their valid identity. How will you get that name updated visibly in, let's say, Outlook, so that no other person, no other employee misgenders that person? No other person on the floor or within your organization addresses that person with wrong name or dead name. Do you have those policies in place? If you go step beyond, all of us know now we have so many benefits at the workplaces from the legal rights and protection. Like we have 6 months maternity leave, we have paternity leave also, which we're talking about extending. We have menstruation leave, right? Do we have similar kind of privileges for the individuals, let's say from the LGBTI plus community, whose needs are different, right? Adoption. So a lot of LGBTI plus individuals will decide to go for adoption. Do they have that benefit of those adoption leaves at the workplaces, right? Do they have same inheritance benefits, nominations in the insurance policies? Can a gay man mention his gay partner on insurance forums as the nominee? I mean, recently I was really pained to read, there is this LGBTI plus marriage discussion going on in the Supreme Court, and the argument was, people are not dying because they don't have a marriage certificate. I mean, this is what our bias is talking about. People are dying. So we all know where we are right now. So many people are getting hospitalized, and major decision needs to be taken, you know, who will, and a lot of LGBTI plus individuals are disowned by their families. So in that case, even if you look at the UNOC community, they have a pseudo family system. So decision which a decision like this needs to be made, who will sign on the form for that person? A person who has been with that person throughout their journey, who is not blood, there is no blood relation or legal relation as of now. But our current judiciary prohibits that person to sign up on such forms, and that's where people are really dying. And because we don't understand our privileges, people are dying. And same, maybe the intensity is little less, but understand, relate that with the corporate culture also. People are not able to mention their actual nominees on the forms because we don't maybe have legal rights and protection at the workplace with the same equality as that of the cishet individuals. This is what I'm talking about.
Sure. Amita, thanks for that. You know, we're beginning to now get some very interesting questions in chat, and I want to allow those questions to come in. Just before I go there, I want to ask something which is a little tricky, and I know you've addressed part of this anyway, but if you could quickly also share your thoughts on this. One of the things that see, the workplace is actually going through a transition, and many people are, there are many people who wish for the older workplace where they didn't have to talk about all this, where they didn't have to deal with all this. You hear from some people, "Ye kya laga rakha hai yaar, inclusion, diversity, etc." The workplace is meant for work. Come in, do your stuff, get out of there. Don't do all of this stuff out here. Any thoughts on that? Why is it important to talk about inclusion? What would you say to these people?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we need to talk about it to help us understand our privileges. Why do we need representation at the workplace, right? We need representation at the workplace because otherwise most of us will never understand our privileges. I mean, just look at a very not heteronormative example. If you do not have a woman, cishet woman at the table, you will never understand she needs maternity leave. She's going to get pregnant tomorrow and she will be away. So your organization need to be supportive. Men will never understand, cishet men will never understand unless a woman is sitting at the table and making them understand this, right? Similarly, the example that I gave, had I not verbalized it today, most of you will never understand that people are dying because there is nobody to sign up for them to make decisions on the forms. So we come from privileged background and we deny to acknowledge our privileges because we don't understand. We never understand our privileges. I mean, even if you look at my journey, fine, I have this aspect of my life, but still I come from privileged background. I am a Savarna woman. I have educated double graduate parents who were understanding enough to have who could indulge in healthy conversation with me, who participated in all the discussions, came with me to psychiatrists and everywhere with an open, mind to understand things. But I understand today that I didn't understand this before. Today, I understand this because I interacted with so many people who have been disowned by their families, for whom survival is the struggle, especially in the pandemic, because they are not educated. They were disowned by their families. Without education, there are no employment opportunities. Plus, look at what our thought is. Just pause for a moment, close your eyes and think. When you see a eunuch person begging at the signal, what is that fleeting thought come to your mind? If the thought is changed today, that thought is changed because conversations are happening. If the thought is changed today, because constantly it's being talked about, the struggles are being discussed in various forums. Personally, growing up, I used to be scared of those people because that's what I was told. That's what I was raised. The moment I used to see them, let's say in railways or somewhere, I used to cringe. I used to, avoid. I used to close my eyes because shutting everything is our cope-up mechanism in uncomfortable situations. That's what I used to do. When I exposed myself in uncomfortable conversation, of course, I had my personal reason also. That's where it helped me change or understand my own privileges. Similarly, for you all, when you really want to understand your privileges, that's where you need this representation from various sections, not just about LGBTI+. Look at our corporate infrastructure here. We have this fire alarm making loud noises. How a person who can't hear understand there is a fire emergency? We don't have any signal to tell them, right? This is the privileges we are talking about. The person will die on the floor because the person cannot hear. Imagine a blind person working at your workplaces, right? You will never understand their struggles. We still don't have friendly infrastructure for the specially able colleagues. How are we? I mean, I remember this ceremony which I just watched in some news channel. There was this celebration happening for specially abled people, and there was no ramp created for the dais. What an irony and tragedy. How do you expect them to come on the dais? And then typical Indian jugaad, 4 people were lifting them and putting them on the dais. But this is a tragedy. This is not something to feel proud about. And now again, couple of techie examples. Some of you know when Google Maps was launched initially, okay, it only had fastest. Okay, this is inspired from a very interesting book which I got to read during lockdown, and I'll recommend all of you please read. It's an amazing book. The title of the book is Invisible Women, Exposing Data Bias in the World Design for Men. Okay. Now, when you will read this book, you will automatically understand why do we need this conversation. So when Google Maps was launched, it has only the feature of fastest route. Because at least the men I know, they're crazy about speed. For them, speed is what the only concern. That's why it had only fastest route. But as a woman, if I want to use Google Maps after 10 p.m., for me, the concern is not fastest route only. For me, more concern is the safest route. But Google Maps completely discounted me and so many other women, because for men, safety is not a concern. They are safe everywhere. Who can do anything to them? For them, just speed is the concern, right? Similarly, look at various surveys that are being carried out by Google. Google's own voice recognition system has failed, I think, more than 57 times out of 100 to recognize voices which are other than typical masculine voices. So when we talk about IoT, Internet over Things, when we want things to be operated using voice commands, how do you expect people apart from the masculine voices to use those devices on IoT? That means you are completely discounting them, right? Now this is Garmin. So Garmin, again, they have gone through evolution, but when Apple's own health app was launched, it couldn't detect menstruation. So a woman cannot use it to align their menstruation cycles using that so-called expensive smart watch, because women were discounted. So your solutions cannot be holistic, catering to all the segments of the society, having maximum number of consumers without you having representation in your product life cycle. Because we don't realize, again, our privileges without having representation. We think this is what is normal, you know. Now it's really triggering me to have the conversation around the current political setup, but you know, some people might not take this in the right spirits and start hunting me down tomorrow to kill me. So I'll not get into that aspect, but that is where in the wider societal aspect also, when the rule is majoritarian rule, that's how human mind works. When we have 80 people from a certain strata, from a certain life journeys who think in certain direction, that becomes the rule. That is where the other 20 people are constantly oppressed. These 80 people will never realize, because they never got those 20 with them. These 80 people never got these 20 to sit across with them at the table. So these 80 people think this is what is morally right. These 80 people create moral structure, culture for the society, and they think this is what is right. This is how it should be. And that's how the society functions. And these 20 people are constantly oppressed. That's where, if we really talk about equality, we need to get these 20 people across board. That's what we are talking about.
Absolutely. Amita, thank you so much for drawing the link between, you know, representation and better products, representation and better policies. I think this is really, really important. And thank you so much for lending your voice to that with wonderful examples. We've got some fabulous questions waiting in the chat box for you. Mishti, over to you.
Yes, absolutely. There have been some wonderful questions and a lot of sharing already happening. So your journey is really inspiring a lot of people in the room today. So thank you, Amita, for that. And you did also speak about how it's so important to bring what's marginalized to the center, where majority doesn't really become the authority all the time. And you spoke about the need for a lot of sensitivity, a lot of empathy, be it infrastructure or be it policies. Now, when we talk about driving majority in terms of policies, there's been a lot of focus on the advancement of women leadership. And I wanted your comments on that. I understand that is very, very important, but is it excluding the other focus areas? That is one part of the question. And the other part of the question is around you've spoken a lot about gender identity, and that is a passion area for me. I feel, gender identity is expressed as self identity beyond social identity. So, a little bit more about both these aspects. One, is the focus excluding the other voices? And the second aspect is a little bit more on why gender identity is beyond what social identity or fitting in is all about. So your
Yeah,
thoughts on
so
that, Amita?
when it comes to now, I'm sure some of you whoever follow finance sector have seen when it comes to Citibank, right? So towards the end of last year or beginning of this year, Citibank was suddenly in news because Jane Fraser became the new CEO of Citi, right? But what was the news across major media houses or the financial houses? Yeah, Citi appoints its first female CEO. Jane Fraser becomes the first female CEO of a global bank. This is the conversation even in 2021. This itself gives you answer where we stand when it comes to female representation at the C-level positions across organizations. It's not just about banking. Look at any sector. How many female prime ministers we had so far? Just one. How many so US, right? Lot of us nurture the American dream. How many female presidents they had, right? How many prime ministers were there in England? Or let's leave the politics aside, even look at the corporate sector. I think the survey even today is hardly 14 to 15% C-level positions are occupied by women, right? Even today, 2021, this is what the situation is, unfortunately. And maybe one of the reasons could be because women always need to make harder choices between their professional careers and their personal lives. Because that's the wider society we are talking about. Again and again, I need to mention the same point. Some of you will get bored, but at least that will help you reflect upon it. Privileges. It's assumed that in an alliance, the woman is supposed to make compromises because that's how the family setup is. If they want to have family, a woman is supposed to resign. A woman is supposed to take a backseat in her professional aspirations and dreams because her job is to look after family. Her job is to take care of the house. Her job is to cook Recently, there was this picture going viral on LinkedIn. An elderly woman cooking. I'm sure some of you have seen it, cooking in the kitchen, and she's wearing that external oxygen supply, the mask and all, and there is this cylinder. And people were celebrating. This is a tragedy of our society. It's not something to celebrate. You are making a woman cook in that condition, and then you're celebrating this. Last year also, in the initial lockdown on WhatsApp, there were this, I'm sure some of you seen this picture, really expressing gratitude towards women because of them we are getting food and our kids are being looked after and this and that, and that picture with women with multiple hands. This is not something to celebrate about. This is a tragedy. Especially men, rather than celebrating this, be partner in her struggles. Help her in domestic chores. You don't have to celebrate and, just start forwarding these posts. Unless this mindset changes, unless men understand these privileges, women will not be able to occupy more C-level positions. Okay. Now, what was the second question? So the gender expression part of it, right?
Yes. About gender identity and self-identity versus social identity.
Yeah, so that is where when I spoke about three aspects, sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. So let me give you a couple of examples. I'm sure you know Ellen DeGeneres, right? There is this famous show, right? Look at how Ellen looks. She's publicly out and open. She's a lesbian woman. So her gender is woman. She's lesbian. She's attracted towards women. But look at her gender expression. It's quite masculine because that's what she likes. Okay. Now, who else? Some of you know Ritu Parno Ghosh, right? There are these amazing movies which she has some masterpieces really. So if you look at Ritu Parno, look at Ritu Parno's gender identity and gender expression here. So gender expression, again, legally Ritu Parno never got the documents changed. So legal documents, the gender might be different. Gender expression was very much feminine, and I know Ritu Parno liked to use feminine gender pronouns in all the conversations, right? So that's how the societal construct, so how you express yourself through your clothing, so through your mannerisms, through your personality is what gender expression is all about. Now, why it's important? So far, the narrative here also has been very heteronormative, binary and stuff like that. There are these individuals who identify themselves with no gender. So they are gender fluid or gender agnostic. That's where, that's where they are quite androgynous when it comes to their gender expression. So, few people will cringe and then there will be these typical dialogues. Ye hai kya? What is this? But understand, ye hai kya? The answer is the person might be gender androgynous. The person might not be identifying with any gender. What is required? See, most of us don't know these things. Don't worry. Some of you might think this is rocket science. Fine. Because unless you have very personal journeys through this, maybe things are very complicated to understand. That's okay. It's okay not to understand things. But what is required here is ask the person, right? What is your gender identity? What is your gender pronoun? How do you identify yourself without getting into the sarcastic tone of discussion? So when you are struggling to understand the other person, ask healthy, polite conversations, questions around their gender pronoun, gender identity, what do they identify with, and the other person will never take an offense in this. And that's where impact matters, not the intent. All of us make mistakes. Fine, that's okay. Apologize and move on. Don't repeat the mistake because impact is what we are talking about, not the intent. Yeah.
Wonderfully shared, Amita. Impact is what is important. And to be able to have open conversations that begin with acceptance, that I think is also very relevant. Over to Aman. Would you want to ask any other question?
Sure. I'm actually going to pause on my questions, and I'm going to read out a few questions from chat from people that have been waiting for you. I'm actually going to merge two questions and pose this. These were some of the early ones that came up, Amita. There's a question from Amita and Ayesha and Sonali each, and I'm going to merge it. So basically people want to know, how were you impacted, during your journey, mentally, emotionally, and how long did it take you to kind of figure things out?
Okay. Yeah. So see, like I said, it doesn't happen overnight. That's where the first important aspect here is, and it's not just about my journey, it's otherwise also, to be your own non-judgment, no advice ally. Okay. Growing up, when I was constantly made to realize that I'm different, I'm not able to fit in, I was not also ready to accept my own self because I was constantly judging my own self. I was my biggest critique. I was not my ally. That's where there was this struggle, and that's where there was this faking things to fit in, which was of course leading to higher emotional labor when I started working in, because I wanted to fit in, I wanted to copy somebody, I wanted to be somebody else. I was not my own ally. I was constantly giving advice to my own self. If I do this way, things will be better. If I do this way, if I present myself this way, if I am behaving this way at the workplace, I will get promoted at my workplaces. The moment I became my own no judgment, no advice ally, things became better, or things became more clear for me. I started understanding how different I am. I started accepting my own self. I had empathetic approach towards my own self. All right. It helped me get clarity about my own self. And we are not so, more often than not, again, the question, who has been your role model? I'm sure most of you have gone through that question. That is where I don't believe in, following somebody as a role model, because that person's journey might be completely different. They didn't have those struggles that I have gone through personally in my own life. All right. I'm not saying we all need to be our own role models, because that can get into the narcissistic mode of thinking. But the point here is, all of us have different struggles. All of us have different journeys. So first is, be your own no judgment, no advice ally. Be empathetic towards your own self. That's where you will understand that this is how you are different from the crowd. Then you will accept, this is how I am different. And then, fine. Once you have made peace with that, automatically other things will start falling into place. Okay. And if I had, let's say, 5 years of time, doesn't mean other individuals will also take 5 years. They might have this realization very quickly, or they might have realization maybe, like, for example, in my erstwhile organization, there was this other person who came to me. So when I went public about my journey, about my identity and everything, so there was this fellow colleague who approached me. So again, his gender identity is still he, that's why I'm addressing him he. So he mentioned he has similar struggles, but he doesn't want to gender transition because he will end up losing everything. All right. So that is where now I shouldn't jump to advice and tell him, oh, it worked well for me, it will work for you, don't worry. No, I am jumping to conclusions. I am jumping to advice. Now that's not what is required here. This person knows his personal aspects better. This person knows his professional aspects better. What I have gone through might not be similar for him. Even if you look at other LGBTI plus people, lot of families kill their own kids. For them, not having a kid like that is better than having a kid who is out and proud about their own identity. We are talking about such families still in our society. They do exist. So what you have seen in NH10, because they went for intercaste marriage, it happens for the LGBTI plus community the moment they go public about their own identity. All right. So that's where you don't have to be judgmental. You don't have to jump to advice. You don't have to do conclusion. Be empathetic. Be that ear to that person just to hear that person out. And then you can tell that person to be less judgmental, less critical about their own self, and that might help that person to figure out things, in their own lives. And that's where the most critical aspect here is taking care of our own physical, emotional and mental well-being, which I'm glad that today everywhere these conversations are happening very rampantly, because when I started my professional journey, the moment you mention about mental issues, you are mental. The moment you talk, oh, I'm in therapy, I'm seeking therapy, oh, you're now getting admitted into some mental hospital, you're gone, you're cracked, you don't deserve to be here. Because mental issues were frowned upon, mental issues were looked down upon. Cut to today, things have changed. We are having these conversations. I can see a lot of qualified mental health professionals are providing services online also in this pandemic, and there are no hang-ups around it. So that's a very good change that we see, because somewhere mental health conversations are also aligned or in sync with the LGBTI plus conversations, because in certain families there is this narrative that something is wrong in your head, that's why you think this way. Just take these tablets, your thinking will get clear, or just some Baba will cure you. Just get admitted into this camp at this ashram. After going through their meditation, suddenly you will be this heterosexual man happily married to a woman producing kids. So there are these narratives still in families, but leaving that aside, I'm glad mental health conversations are happening, because that's what the need of the hour is.
Thanks so much for that, Amita. More questions coming. I'm aware of the time, and I know that some of you may have actually budgeted maybe an hour for this. So I'm seeking your permission to keep this conversation going, given that a lot of people want some answers to come to the questions they've asked. So we will, extend a bit and feel, if you can, feel free to hang around. Another question from Sam, Amita. He's saying, look, don't you think employee resource groups or ERGs provide a safe space to start with? And do you have any alternatives that you can recommend?
So absolutely, ERGs are very much required. Okay. Like you said, ERGs create those safe. Sorry, anybody saying anything? I think Latika is unmuted. Okay, she's on mute now. Sorry for calling you out. So ARGs do create these safe spaces at the workplaces. That is very much required because, like I said, see, organization can be extremely supportive. Let's say, for example, LGBTI plus community or LGBTI for people, but doesn't mean you will push people to come out at the workplaces. There are various other aspects involved, especially for their families and personal journeys. That's where that person might not be comfortable or will decide not to come out at the workplace. But that person might find a safe space, when you have an ERG working for the LGBTI plus people. That person might join that ERG as an ally and work towards, driving legal rights and protection at the workplace for the LGBTI plus people. So that's where having ERGs definitely is very helpful at the workplaces because they don't just create safe spaces, they also work towards creating equal kind of a culture from the legal rights and protection lens at the workplaces, right? They also work in a lot of organizations. I see extensively employment opportunities and hiring opportunities being created for the marginalized community that is happening through ERGs. But my only concern, or the point that I mentioned initially, is where focus needs to be given is don't have these very strict boundaries amongst ERGs. The boundaries needs to be made blurred. So for example, for Women's Day celebration panel discussion, you should not hesitate to invite, let's say, an out and proud trans woman on the panel, because that's how you are blurring the boundaries. For a specially abled colleague celebration day, you should not shy away from invite somebody, let's say, from the LGBTI plus community. So intersectionality is what we are talking about. So be cautious that by creating ERGs, you're not creating compartments and dividing the workforce. As long as you take care of that, of course, ERGs are very helpful.
Thank you, Amita, for sharing that. And absolutely, I think what you said is not trying to do that division by creating different forums, but trying to bring in more intersection and blending in. So that is very important. And Aman, with your permission, I think we also are managing time and some very powerful questions are coming up, but I would also want to open the forum for individual sharing because all personal stories create strong impact. So I'm sure there's something that's moved and shifted within you. So anyone would directly want to share something or ask Amita any question, please feel free. You don't need to navigate it through us. And you could directly unmute yourself and ask a question or share your experiences, whatever has come up for you, whatever has moved or shifted in the realm of inclusion circles.
Good evening, ma'am. May I talk? I am Anushri.
Yes, sure.
Oh, okay. So I am Anushri and I'm pursuing my MSc Psychology and HR, which is Industrial Psychology from Christ University, Bangalore. So I'm really interested in this inclusivity and this actually the HR domain. But the thing is that when I had a talk with my seniors, they said that you know as a fresher, it would be very difficult for you to get into this domain and work. I really did not understand why they said that, but they were not very reluctant to answer my question. And at that moment, I could not understand why did they say that diversity and inclusion is one domain where I couldn't really get in so easy. So I am just inquisitive to know this answer. Is it so tough, or the HRs have to be really experienced to understand this whole domain? Thank you. This was my question.
Thank you, Anushri. Amita, if you would like to respond to that.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I can't really answer on their behalf because, I don't know what mindset they had when they mentioned this way that, you are not, because we hire fresher, we put them on projects, right? That's how they learn on job. So that's what I would suggest. So there is nothing a fresher can do because, otherwise freshers will not be hired in any organization. Yeah. But I would say that, especially when we talk about equality, representation matters. That's why I always mention this, that rather than having privileged cishet individuals occupying the ERGs working towards equality, especially for the marginalized communities, we should consciously invest efforts in getting people from the marginalized communities to lead networks, because my struggle a cishet person will never understand, especially a cishet man, because I had seen cishet men occupying DNI positions in various organizations, and that is what really pains me. I don't have anything against cishet men, but how will that person relate with the struggles of, let's say, an individual having different journey when it comes to sexual orientation and gender identity? You have just born with so many privileges. You are born with not even silver and platinum spoon in India, because we live in a very patriarchal and misogynistic society. The moment you are born a man, you automatically come with so many spoons, and that's where, how will you understand the struggles of other people? So that is where my problem is. Or else, when it comes to freshers, no experience at all, nothing should stop you in to work in the field that you are really passionate about and interested in.
Thank you so much, Amita. I hope that's answered your question. Any other experiences anyone would want to share, ask?
It's really helpful and inspiring.
Hi, this is Anusha here. Thank you, Amita. A wonderful Anusha Sai from Bangalore. Thank you, Amita. Really insightful talk. Loved your entire storyline, your articulation of your experiences, everything. I just want to expand a little bit on Amita's answer to Anushri. I hope I'm getting your name correct. Now, I come with 18 plus years experience. I'm an executive coach for the C-suite. I'm also a diversity and inclusion evangelist and leader in the industry. And let me tell you by experience, there are definitely, yes, HR professionals who might state the answer that you received. And I'm not trying to defend them, but they might come from a lens that this is a sensitive subject and they want somebody who's gone through certain type of experience in order to handle these issues a little bit more delicately. Having said that, I myself, when I have led projects or, I've been the head of diversity and inclusion for big companies, I have definitely taken in absolute freshers straight from the colleges. Not just that, even interns, right, to do projects. So it should never stop you to get into anything. And that's one great example of intersectionality, because the perspective that you get of a fresher, you're not going to get that from an experienced eye, let me tell you. So that's a great insight that you have. So you should just keep on it. And if you get the right leader, you will get the project that you want.
Thanks, Anusha, and I'm so glad to see you. I hope you're safe and doing well in the pandemic.
Yes, we'll connect after the call.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Anyone else would like to share any experiences, any questions, anything that you would want to voice your opinion on?
Hi, Amita.
Hi, Nitin.
Hi, Nitin.
My name is Nitin Velde and I speak from Pune. So lovely session and the perspective that you brought, and I want you to comment on only one thing that's been on my mind, that when people talk and ask certain questions, do they come out of what is being generally asked, or is it out of not knowing? Because there are various lenses. I'll give you a context what I'm saying. Many years back, to a woman, they would ask questions about her family, but that whole context is also changing. So many questions that people ask, they actually are not aware that they're not supposed to ask those questions maybe. So as a society, we are learning that. My question to you is, 25 years back, 51 participants on a session like this may not have been possible. So if you were to rate, is there, in your own experience, is there a progress towards that? Because sometimes one gets a feeling as if nothing is happening. So let's say you want an accelerated, inclusion on all these aspects. So how do you think, is everybody sarcastic? Is everybody, aren't we also putting them under the same lens of being, there could be a naive question, because when I process this information and I met somebody like this, it took me some time to absorb the information, process it, and I became more open to having conversations with friends and family on this topic. And that is the reason I'm here today. So is there anything in your mind or your experience that as a society we need to educate, and it could be starting, in my mind, from a school level or education level rather than a syllabus oriented thing like that? So any thoughts on that? That is happen from both sides? Sometimes even people who have different priorities don't want to feel included for want of being different.
Actually, I'm kind of lost in the question, but what I would mention here is 20 years ago, we didn't have Zoom also. 20 years ago, we never had such virtual conversation, right? But today in the pandemic, Zoom has suddenly become this blessing wherein we are able to have a very productive, fruitful conversation. It feels like we are sitting next to each other. Okay. When it comes to asking question, I'm sure you have seen those memes and videos being shared. Sania Mirza was being asked, when are you settling down? We never asked that question to, let's say, a Virat Kohli. Suddenly Anushka Sharma is being asked, when are you having babies? That question is never being asked to Virat Kohli. So somewhere this is related to our patriarchal and misogynistic mindset. This is related with the societal construct, wherein, again, if you look at very heteronormative lens, men are supposed to do this is normal. Women are supposed to do this is normal. A woman who is not married, she can be a CEO of a bank, but she's not married. What's the use of a life? A woman can be holding she can be Prime Minister of India, but if she doesn't have babies, what's the point of a life? She doesn't even have babies. That's not the narrative for a man. A man's singlehood is celebrated as he's being the celibate and devoted for the country. We all know our Prime Minister, right? So a man's singlehood holding a certain position, Tata, right, is celebrated because he has devoted his life. That's where the narrative is different, got to do with our patriarchal and misogynistic upbringing and thinking.
But is it changed? Let's say you, in your own opinion, we wanted to reach a figure of 10 out of 10. In your own journey, do you think that people are becoming more and more open? Not the most ideal, but do you think it's a progressive way of dealing with such issues?
Absolutely, things are changing. That is where conversations like these are coming into picture. That's where representation come into picture. That's where participating in uncomfortable conversation comes into picture. Okay, that's where things are changing. Imagine, like I mentioned, today we have 6 months maternity leave. Did we have that before? Today we have menstruation leave. Did we have that before? In fact, women were treated untouchables during that cycle. They had so many rules and restrictions. Today, at least we are talking about making them enter a temple. So imagine a debate where, this is not even a point for discussion. And imagine a debate where we are talking about their rights to enter a temple. This is the transition journey. This is the evolution we are talking about. Imagine not just having women at the workplaces. So there is no point in asking question, right? Because that's not what they are supposed to do. To a journey where a woman is sitting at the table and making decisions, where we are talking about creating policies which are inclusive for women. Same for the LGBTI+ community. Imagine an era where they were treated like non-existent. Nobody was ready to see them because they were just invisible. Even in families, don't ask, don't tell. Fine, if you have this, just suppress it. Be happy with this in 4 walls. Publicly, you don't have to talk about it. From that era to an era where we are discussing, where a debate is happening in Supreme Court for the gay marriages, where publicly we are talking about protection, same gender policy protection at the workplaces, where we are talking about same gender marriages, how we can have those feel included at the workplaces. So of course things are changing. What matters here is just take a 10 seconds pause, especially when you are posing a question to the other person. When that person is out and proud about their journeys, take a 10 seconds pause. Are you posing that question from your judgmental, misogynistic, patriarchal upbringing, or are you posing that question because you genuinely want to know? If you take that pause and ask that question, I think you will frame the question correctly and you will get what you're seeking for. Again, still, if you make a mistake, apologize, move on, because the impact matters.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think I'm going to remember those 10 seconds, not only in questions such as these, but in any question. I'm sure they'll help us to, have better conversations with people across. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nathan.
No
Thank you,
problem.
Nita. I'll just
Hi,
quickly
Amrita.
bring in Aman. Yes. Yes, Prachi.
If I
Prachi,
may,
I'll go after you.
yeah.
Yes.
Hi. Thank you so much to both of you for that. Thank you, Amita. First of all, really, thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation that you've had since last 1 hour because it really stems very strong conversations and thought processes while dealing with something as strong as DNI in general. But I have a few disconnects in general how DNI is treated, and I want to also understand your perspective how it should be spoken and dealt in organizations. And I'm sorry, but I'm talking about a specific corporate culture to bring up a discussion on this one right now, for a very simple reason that most of us do somewhere are working in corporate setups, and we do encounter such initiatives being brought up every day on DNI, and it's a strong agenda to talk about. Diversity and inclusion in organization is seen in general about LGBTQI. I think in India, this particular whole piece is far-fetched. People don't even understand the basic definition of DNI, and probably I'm also learning right now, to be very frank. So talking about such sensitive topic about their people personal choices related to LGBTQI community is a far-fetched thought process for people to develop on. Very basic in general how you can create inclusion in organizations for the maximum 80% of the workforce. And I that's my personal belief. If you can actually create an understanding about it, inclusion, everybody can be excluded and included, then automatically for the remaining 20% it is comparatively easy for us to bring about that awareness, as well as bring out more effective initiatives in our society, as well as for specific set of ERGs as well. So I want to understand your perspective to how we can talk more about this. We can create more awareness in general to everything that we do around, and especially from your experience, I want to understand that. Thank you. If I have more time for that, apologies, but I really wanted to share my thought in detail.
Thank you, Prachi. Thank you so much. Amita, any responses to that?
So I'm glad that she mentioned LGBTI plus, because if you see, diversity is about women. So when you say diversity drive, it's a drive to hire women. That's the narrative for most of the organization is. Now see, understand, why do you have DNI conversation at the workplace? You have DNI conversation at the workplace to create an equal work culture. So to create workplaces which are equal for everybody, regardless of their gender identity, sexual orientation, race, religion, whatever, color. You want to have an organization which is equal, which entitles same equal legal rights and protection to all their employees. That's your primary goal. Okay. Now, when you have that your primary goal, and this goal is percolated to all the ERGs that you have. Now, why do you have ERGs? Because, like you said, diversity has various facets to it. Diversity in terms of thought, diversity generation, diversity gender, diversity sexual orientation, diversity abilities, so diversity has various facets. That's where, how will you realize their different needs and requirements at the workplaces if you do not have these ERGs specially created for these different facets of diversity? So how will you understand what a disabled person needs at the workplace from the legal rights and protection perspective? How will you understand what LGBTI plus person needs at the workplace? Within LGBTI plus, again, there are these various facets. How will you understand what an generational person who is an old person at the workplace needs? So just think, when we have women joining back workforces after a sabbatical, they have different requirements. First of all, there is this mental block which they go through. There is this imposter syndrome heavy, because you have been out from the rat race. You have been out from the constantly changing technology landscape. So when you join back, you have so many fear within your own mind. How will I cope up with these? I don't understand this. I don't understand the conversation. How can I bring positive ideas to the table when I don't understand the conversation that is happening at the table? So when you don't have an ERG or an initiative working for that, how will you understand these needs, these struggles, right? That's where you need to have these ERGs to understand the problem statement, to understand the needs. But the overall objective is the same, to create an equal workplace. Yeah, hope I have answered your question. We are also running short of time.
Yeah. So we'll take one last question. Usha wants to say something. So Usha, if you could unmute and speak, and then we move.
Hi, Amita.
Hi.
Thank you, Mishti. Hi, Amita. I'm Usha. I'm from Hyderabad. I just wanted to understand, while you were speaking, you spoke about people do not want to be called out and we are creating these barriers. But let's say if I were to induct that person and he's special, okay, and tell the entire team members that let's say he wants to be addressed as she, her, and that's the kind of, addressing that they want to do. How do you think as HRs we could have done that induction better for this person? To ensure that he's not insecure about the entire thing, but at the same time, you tell the entire team members, or he will not only be interacting with his team members, right? He'll be interacting with other stakeholders also. So how do we do that without calling out?
So now, see, first of all, that individual has vocalized about their gender pronoun and gender identity, right? It's all about the preference also. So for example, if that person wants to be addressed with certain gender pronoun, then that's what the rights we are talking about, right? That's what the Constitution also gives us, right? So what is stopping you from using that gender pronoun for that person, because they themselves want that gender pronoun, right? That's where in an induction with a batch of 60, what is stopping you to telling everybody that XYZ and their gender pronoun is she, her? So I would request all of you to address that person with the correct gender pronoun. Simple. And after that, if somebody is not able to understand and all, they can come forward and have that conversation. It's a very normal conversation. There is nothing difficult about it. It's a very regular conversation, right? If, like, for example, somebody likes pink, they say, I like pink. Yeah, doesn't mean you will start painting the entire world pink, right? It's that person's preference. Similarly, for that person, if their gender pronoun is she, her, use that pronoun in your conversation. Simple. If you make mistake, apologize, correct yourself and use the correct gender pronoun. So that is what I'm saying. Don't just look at the exterior. Especially for HR people, this sensitization is very important, because we just make snap judgments and we just follow our judgments. But that is not what is required. I mean, sensitize yourself. Ask people what are their gender pronouns, especially for those people where you have certain doubts. So rather than practicing fear about that, ask that person, right, in a healthy conversation, what is your gender pronoun? Would you like to share? How do I address you? That person will tell you. If that person is just, look-wise is different, but otherwise very regular gender pronoun and all, there is nothing changed, fine, then there is no mistake at all. You just continue with whatever narrative you have. As simple as that.
Thanks so much, Amita.
Is it allowed to ask one last
Amita.
question?
Shama,
Is it allowed to ask one question? I know, time is up. I know.
Shama,
But still.
here's a thought. Tell me how you feel about it. We've got loads of questions in the chat box, and I'm sure you and others have them too. Here's a thought. Tell me how this works for you. What I want to encourage us to do is use the hashtag inclusion circles and ask some of these questions on LinkedIn. If you want to do that, and then what we'll do.
Absolutely, why not?
Yeah, between Amita, Mishti, Gurleen, me, and some of the others, all of us can actually get involved and start giving responses to what you want. Is that something that will work for you?
See, the in context of the org issue that I wanted to refer is not something I can actually go about sharing. But yes, in terms of general questions that are I have related to subject, of course I can, and I would love to in the circle that you suggested. But yeah, this question I wanted to ask was meant for the group or in a close circle. So I'd rather write a mail or something, because looking at everybody's time and the way
That'll
things
be
are.
awesome, Shama. You can,
I would also mention,
on, Amita.
like I said, I like to indulge in these conversations. So my email ID is my first name followed by my last name at gmail.com. I'm very much active on LinkedIn and Twitter. So feel free to approach me with your question. I'll be more than happy to respond.
Yeah, my questions are would be a little
Correct.
different, because
Thank
it's
you.
from the retail setup. So that's how.
Sure. So you
So
can.
by all means, pose what we'll do is we will put our email addresses in the chat box, and you
Yes.
can actually pick them out from
Absolutely.
there, and do write into us, and we'll be very happy to answer those questions. Thank you for understanding, Shama. Really nice of you, and sorry to
Thank you,
rush
thank
you
you.
like this.
No
Here's
problem. Thanks.
Thank you.
I feel
we've
included.
got- Thank you, Shama. Thank you so much. वो पास हो गया. Awesome. So, thank you for saying that, Shama. So, here's what we've got.
Yes.
We've got something special for you lined up, and I'll let Mishti talk about what that is. But just before we introduce the special, and before we start saying goodbye to each other, we want you to continue to have this conversation. Unfortunately, time is a limitation. So, use the hashtag, hashtag inclusion circles, and post your views, your opinions, your disagreements, your questions on LinkedIn to us. Feel free to tag us with that, and we'd love to take this conversation forward, do Q&A with you out there. Do also feel free to follow the OD Alternatives page, and on that we will keep updating you on the next edition of Inclusion Circle. So two things to do: follow the ODA page, follow hashtag Inclusion Circles. You will probably receive an email from us if you've signed up for this webinar on your and you'll get links to do these things, and you'll get intimated on future episodes, who's featuring in the episode, and all these question answers, etc. So take the conversation on to LinkedIn. Having said that, I'm going to step back and allow Mishti to introduce I'll keep quiet.
Thank you so much, Aman, and thank you everyone for your sharing. Sharing circles, it's difficult to budget time because there is so much that comes up and people really want to express. But like Aman said, this is just the beginning of the journey, and the journey shall continue. So we will have many more episodes. Thank you, Amita, for sharing very powerful insights and for not just educating us, but empowering us with some of the practices that should be there in the DEI space. So also your comments around social stereotypes and how to think beyond that from the lens of sensitivity and empathy. I think that was very, very powerful. Now, I feel inclusion begins with the first letter of inclusion, which is I. So inclusion begins with I. So it's a journey from I and we. Can we check our own implicit biases? Can we check our own behaviors and then translate those behaviors into the workplace? So in order to just celebrate this piece of inclusion, we have a small song. Those of you who are getting late, I would leave the choice to you, but this is a small song to celebrate the sharing circle, to celebrate inclusion, to help us all imagine a world which is beyond boundaries, beyond divisions, and just create a lens of more inclusion and social connection. So over to Parth for this beautiful song, introducing our musician Parth to help us celebrate inclusion together.
You guys sing along if I know this one, okay? Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. I was only sky. Imagine all the people
Awesome stuff, Parth.
Thank
Great
you
job.
so
Awesome
much,
stuff,
Parth.
Parth. So thank you so much, Amita, once again for joining us and sharing your powerful journey that's inspired all of us. And on that note, we would sign off right now and say thank you to all the lovely participants for being a part of the inclusion circles. And do continue with us on this journey for inclusion and from bias to belonging. Aman, would you like to say something before we actually
Now,
sign
just
off?
now you've said it. Thank you very much for
Okay.
coming in, and thank you very much everyone for coming in and making this inclusion circle what it was. Thank you so much for your contributions. We look forward to seeing you again. So from from Parth, Gurleen, Mishti, Amita, and me. Thank you very much, and bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.